Do you want to find out the best way to heat your home? Well, this is the episode for you. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Heal Your Home. I'm Jason Ratcliffe, the home health expert, and within this episode, we are going to be discussing the difference between SAP and EPC certificates. I will also continue my interview with the amazing Charlotte Dawson about all things interior design. I will also be answering a listener question on how best to upgrade your heating, and of course, a tenant top tip regarding tenants left with absolutely no heating and what to do about it. But first, let's discuss EPC and SAP certificates.
Heal Your Home with Jason Ratcliffe, the home health expert.
So the big debate today is what's the difference between energy performance certificates, otherwise known as EPC certificates, and SAP certificates, otherwise known as standard assessment procedure. Well, to be honest with you, one is about mathematical theory and one is about practical application. And as you can guess, EPCs are about practical application. If a building already exists, an EPC certificate will then be generated, whereas a SAP certificate is more to do with the theoretical design of a building. This helps architects, planning designers, grant funders, etc. determine what a property's EPC will likely be when the property is completed and then assessed. This really helps be able to grade the carbon footprint of the property, the sustainability of the property, and ensure it can meet current building regulation standards. Now, SAPs typically came in about 1992 in the UK, and they are really helpful bits of kit, but they do have extreme limitations in the sense they are obviously a mathematical equation. You pump the numbers in, or you pump the materials in that you're using, etc., and then out pops a theoretical energy efficiency standard. Now, this is basically the best we have at the moment. It is flawed, but the government and other official experts are working on that currently as we speak. So EPCs, energy performance certificates, these are the juicy bit. These are the bits that are real life practical application of what an energy performance certificate is of a property. Now, these are flawed by nature because they are universal, running from a database that doesn't actually know the nuances or the flexibility and the location orientation, all these bespoke bits about a property. So it is basically a universal number and letter, so A being the best, G being the worst, and therefore it gives you a rough indication of the energy efficiency of that property. Now, to be honest with you, SAPs are really good for a theoretical, gives you an understanding, especially if you're buying off plan, because it will give you an indication of what that property or what the aim of that property is energy wise. So how energy efficient is that developer trying to make that building? So it gives you a good indication. It's not an exact science because it is basically a expression or a calculation that's put through and that doesn't actually look at the implications of the exact building. There are some margins of error, but it is there for a guide. And therefore, an EPC, again, still has margins of error. But what it does do is it gives you a good indication, especially as a homeowner looking to purchase a new home, to see, well, actually how much work is entailed to then put this property into a good energy efficiency standard. How much is it going to cost me to invest and make this sustainable, reduce the carbon footprint of that property, and therefore reduce the running costs? But also as a tenant, the same kind of principle, but how comfortable is that home going to be and how expensive is that property going to be to run comfortably? This is really important, especially if you have young children, vulnerable people living with you, or elderly people living with you. If you're an asthmatic and you're trying to go into a stone-built, poor-maintained property with an F or a G property, I mean, yes, it is actually no longer legal to tenant those properties, but hypothetically, that's going to be a really bad situation to put yourself in. So EPC certificates, they're not perfect, they're far from perfect, but they are a really good way to be able to understand the ballpark of the property's sustainability and also the energy efficiency. So how are they actually generated? Well, EPC certificates are very much on a basis of point systems. So therefore, if you have a gas boiler that happens to be modern, you're going to end up getting a better score than electric night store heaters that might be dated. Or if you've got triple glazing, you're going to get a better score than single glazing, for example. Or if you have a much deeper depth of insulation within your roof void, you're going to get a better mark than if you don't have as much. So in actual fact, it is very much a tick box exercise, not looking at how these things relate to each other or how they actually relate to the building in its entirety, or sympathetic treatment or orientation, all of these things, which actually is the reason why they're not perfect. But they are good enough at the moment for what they were used for. They're not good enough for the future or predicting what buildings would be with climate change, but that is a whole different episode that we can go into in the future. Now, EPC certificates are really great for being able to, the recommendation section. Now, the recommendation section will state what the possible upgrades that that building can have, and then what the desired or what the realistic outcome of that. So, for example, you upgrade the heating system. Okay, you upgrade it with the specified heating system as stated within the EPC certificate. If that then gets reassessed, your EPC rating will improve by X amount. So this is a really good, again, loose guide, and it's a free guide because obviously an EPC hypothetically exists, especially if you've bought or sold a property. It legally needs an EPC certificate. And if you're a tenant, again, it needs an EPC certificate unless that property is exempt. So if it's a listed building, for example. Now, this then allows you to give that to a contractor to say, I want X done because I know that will improve my EPC certificate. So if that is your concern, if that is your main prerogative to improve that, then that is the way to go. It's a really good starting point. But also, what's really important is you must go and get some form of advice from somebody who understands the building you live in. Now, for example, cavity infill insulation. It's one of the biggest recommendations on EPC certificates. However, what they don't say is the other implications. For example, looking at what happens if the external facade, if your render, for example, is not maintained and it starts cracking. Well, if that's the case, water's going to get in, it will start freezing, causing more fracturing, but then eventually water will get into that cavity. Once it gets into the cavity, it cannot do the job of what the cavity was designed for in the first place, whereas it then discharges water out of the building. Instead, what you've done is you've filled that cavity, and if it's a porous or a highly absorbent material like a mineral wool or a cellulose, so recycled paper, anything like that, that moisture will become trapped and condensed, and then all you will start doing is getting damp going into the property. So it will look like rising penetrative dampness. You'll have loads of issues in the property, and if that property predates 1989-ish, then you're looking at cavity wall ties that aren't as good as today, and the galvanization are not really great at all, and therefore it's going to oxidize and start rusting, and then you start getting things like cavity wall tie failure. So the point here is, obviously we're not going into all of the building pathology on EPCs and recommendations, but what I am doing is giving you a serious example of a very common recommendation from EPCs that can actually cause serious harm to your home. So it's important to make sure that you get the right type of advice, and also you understand the building, and it needs to fit within your financial your financial capabilities as well. There is pointless basically overreaching and not then being able to afford to run the property anyway. That would completely defeat the object. So always looking at the end objective would really help. But that's basically the difference between a SAP, so a standard assessment procedure, and an EPC, an energy performance certificate. If this is of interest and more listeners would like to have a more detailed analysis of this in more of a case-by-case basis, I'm more than happy to go through that. By all means, pop us in line on info@homehealthexpert.co.uk or via our social media.
Heal your home with Jason Ratcliffe, the home health expert.
In a previous episode, I had the great privilege to speak to the interior designer Charlotte Dawson regarding all things interior design and how that can enhance well-being. The interview was so great that we wanted to make it a two-parter, so this is the second part of that interview. I suppose I am one of those guilty ones of not thinking about the layout probably as much as I should do, in the sense that currently my home office is in the bedroom, which is never a good idea for
Mm.
kind of wind down times. So, especially post COVID when people are doing that hybrid approach. So, I'm kind of in the process of redesigning the layout and where things go in my house and kind of get work out of the relaxation areas. So, I think
Yeah.
from your experience, do you find that to be something you need to kind of think about as well?
Yeah, and a lot of us work from home now, don't we? And I'm one of those people as well, lucky to be in a position to do so. But I once spoke to a client about this, and she was struggling with having her office in her home. We've now actually done an extension on that property, and it's in its furthest point away from the rest of the areas of the house that she uses. So it's a very deliberate route to get there. She's going nowhere else. If she goes through that door, it's work, you know. It's creating those little rituals almost. Like if you were working in an office, you might get there, store your bag, coat, briefcase, you know, in a place, go to the canteen or the kitchen area and grab a coffee, and then log on and be down at your desk. So
Yeah.
it's trying to create a ritual in your own home that signifies you are in a different space now. This is a different purpose, and you know, having those sort of rituals of arriving at your workplace.
Yeah.
Because when it's in your bedroom, that is quite hard. And I know, obviously in lockdown, people were using ironing boards at the end of their desk, at the end of their
Oh, wow.
beds, weren't they, to function as
Yeah.
desks. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really hard to create that separation.
And I suppose it's the constant disruptions and potential kind of distractions as well. If you're in your home environment, it's, oh, I could just do that. I could just do that bit of cleaning. And before you know it, you've done none of the work you're
Yeah.
supposed to. And then you end up kind of in this backward state. So, yeah, it's quite an interesting one. But so from a cleanliness perspective and choosing the materials in your home and kind of things like that to improve, I suppose, the hygiene and general well-being and feel in your home, have you got any tips for people or advice that could help that?
I think always think about the maintenance and how to clean the materials. It's all well and good having really beautiful mosaic tiles in a shower, for example. You know, small that come on a sheet, and you apply the mosaic to the wall and grout in between. But the level of cleaning that requires will be quite challenging to maintain. And who wants to spend loads of time cleaning? So, you know, think about making it as easy as possible to maintain. So, tiles and grout is a key one where I always advise clients to think about the upkeep. Ceramic tiles are the most hygienic. Obviously, some materials are porous and they'll hold on to bacteria, whereas your ceramic tiles are going to be really easy to clean. And when it comes to sort of worktops, using granite, stainless steel, if people like that aesthetic, laminate worktops, marble and quartz, they still stand up to being really robust for cleaning and getting rid of any bacteria. As you mentioned earlier as well, thinking about the flooring surfaces and making those as easy to clean as possible. If you've got pets
Yeah.
and children, you know, it makes your life easier if you know that the flooring surface is difficult
Yeah.
to damage. You know,
Yeah. And I
um,
suppose getting in with
engineered
them.
oak will. Sorry, I
Oh,
talked over
sorry.
you then, but
I cut in your flow.
engineered
Sorry.
engineered oak is a great material, but it does bleach from the sun and change colour, and it also can be really easily damaged with dints and scratches. That obviously doesn't impact like the health and cleanliness of it, but if that's going to bug you, that there's those damages there, then you need to be choosing a flooring that's going to be really robust and that you're not going to worry about, so that when people do come round to visit you and you know the children are all playing, and you're not going to be worried about returning to a room where there's sort of Play-Doh smeared into the carpet. You know, having surfaces that you can easily clean, helpful.
Yeah. Fantastic. So the last thing is, if anybody wants more advice on interior designing and general support or your services in general, where's the best place to get hold of you?
My website, Chestnut Interiors, has links to contact me there. You can book a 15-minute free consultation as well to talk through some problems and just get to know me and how I work and like get to know the projects that you're working with. But also Instagram, I use Instagram quite frequently, so that's a good place to see examples of projects and how I like to approach them.
Fantastic. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Hopefully, the listeners have got a huge amount out of this. I have. So thank you. And I look forward to having you on again soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Right, I've got some more points if you want to ask another question.
Oh, what's that?
Edit it in. Things to avoid when planning the layout.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, what we can do as well is we cut and change these up for socials as well. So, we can do that. No problem.
An extra little, have a drink and then add a little bit. You're going to have fun editing. And we've got some notes on helping the property flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Sorry. Gonna be a long one.
It's all good. Absolutely. The more the better.
Helpful things.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything else as well as that? Because we can cut and change this into like a couple of features as well if it's easier as well. It's quite cool.
I've just got notes on the flow, creating ways to help your property flow and things to avoid when planning the layout. So, but we can, if you ask me those as questions and then jump in if there's anything you want me to expand on.
No problem at all. So in the flow of your home and actually kind of looking at how the layout may affect, the optimization of using your home, what's the advice you can give people when thinking about that?
I think gone are the themed rooms, thankfully. So our homes no longer feel like Alton Towers and we've got, various brightly coloured themed rooms. They're great for children, but they don't really create that cohesion in a design scheme. So I always suggest using a similar colour palette and trying to have subtle variances of key colours if you're using them. So if you're having your wow colour, your pop colour, green and chestnut. I love chestnut brown at the moment, naturally. But those colours can be introduced and sort of taken throughout the whole property, almost as if you could bring everything together and switch things around and move pieces of furniture and accessories from different rooms. We've mentioned talking about threshold changes, but also think about door openings because and if you want to create a plan that's sort of semi-broken open plan, so you've got opportunities to close off areas, which is great if you've got older teenage children that are still at home. Great if you want to watch separate programs on TV or do different things. If you can have ways to segregate and zone areas, that's really helpful. And doing that through doors is effective. So you can use sliding pocket doors with full glazing or partial glazing, and it just sort of breaks up an open plan layout, gives that flexibility. It's also important to not overcrowd rooms, both from a physical moving around perspective, but also just to make spaces not feel cluttered. And you can use views from one room to another to sort of borrow that experience. And you can be in one, maybe a snug, but you can actually take a peek through a partial glazed door and see into the lounge, and it just contributes to that lovely homely feeling. So you're thinking about not overcrowding and borrowing the view. So we actually put a window in our kitchen that's at really high eye line level, just to glance at the top of the palm trees on the threshold on the boundary really between us and the neighbours. So just if you are building, think about how to borrow views from outside and bring them in. And again, I think we've touched on multi-purpose rooms already, but if you can have a snug that also functions as an office, maybe a guest room that functions as an extra lounge space. It's all about, again, drilling down to what you actually need in your home.
And I suppose dynamic homes as well. Everything is not... Yeah, everything is not just what oh, this is a bedroom or this is a sitting room. I think multi-dimensional rooms. If you've got people guests coming to stay, but you don't necessarily have the enough bedrooms, you could then kind of convert the snug or something like that. So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
great way of thinking about it. So you mentioned quite a little bit briefly about bringing the outside in, but what about quite literally about kind of bringing plants in and things like that? Because obviously there's a lot of good kind of positive research out there about filtration and general kind of energy vibes being brought into the property. Have you got any kind of opinions on your own experience about that?
I don't always keep plants alive, unfortunately, but it's something I would like to do. Yeah, to be a successful house plant owner would be something that should go on like my CV and profile, I think. So I'll hopefully get there one day. But yeah, bringing plants in is a lovely way to they clean the air, obviously, and they add the greenery, the connection to nature that's just so restoring. So yeah, I love bringing plants in and fresh flowers. They do really brighten your day.
Absolutely. Plus the brownie points, right? You bring in flowers into the home, especially for me, for my
Yeah.
wife.
Oh,
So,
that's nice.
oh, I know. So, with sort of natural light and things like that, you were saying you were thinking about that within the layout of your home. When you're looking at, I suppose, putting an extension in or ways you can alter your property to have, the benefits of views or natural light, how important do you think that is, and what rooms do you think it's the most important in?
It's it's the found it really light is the foundation to everything else being successful. With the wrong with not enough natural light or working against the lighting conditions that you have, it it doesn't allow everything else in the design to be as successful as it should be. So we've really spent a lot of time on our own project thinking about, I say royal we actually there, it's more me obviously, thinking about the natural light. And I was capturing, the space that we've extended into was a garden before. So I was capturing pictures all through the year before we went to an architect with my intended plan of where the light was landing, morning, noon, night,
Yeah.
autumn, spring, summer, winter, and also capturing. I was physically taking photos and storing them in an album because obviously it dates it for you, so when you
Yeah.
took the photo and what time of day. So it was a really good research exercise to do to understand where the light was being received. As one example, we've got a proper like an extension on our house that is the roof is semi-pitched, so it's like a half vault. And the proposal originally was to put Velux windows on that, but that was from a north-facing aspect, so it wasn't actually going to receive the best light. So
Yeah.
instead, we've done a clerestory window. I never really know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's one of those funny words. In a higher point of the roof that's receiving south facing light. So we can't really, we can't appreciate anything out of it other than blue sky when it's nice day. But the light that comes in really transforms the space, and it changes the way that the paint even looks on the ceiling and the walls. So it really is essential to get that natural light as good as you can get it. And
And I
in a
suppose
bungalow, often, sorry,
I think there was a
in
delay.
a bungalow,
Sorry, go on.
we'll get there. Often in a bungalow, there can be a dark spot. And also, if people extend and extend and extend a ground floor layout, Victorian terrace, for example, you go back and back and back, and there becomes this dark spot in the centre of the house. There are things like light tunnels to try and help, and other clever architectural details. But one thing I try to do in that case is put the room in the dark place where you need it to be dark or you don't need light. So the laundry room that I mentioned earlier, that doesn't have a window because it doesn't need to. We're going in there, putting the washing on and getting the washing out. We've got wall lights and a pendant and spotlight, so we don't actually need to have a window in there. And also bathrooms. Many hotels that you stay in, you might start to notice after this, but they don't always have windows in because they're on the corridor side of the building. They're in the centre of the building. So big mirrors, plenty of efficient lighting, great use of colour contrasts, and it can really be a good trick. So yeah, I think the places you need the best light are your living space and kitchen.
No, absolutely, I completely agree. And you touched on color palettes. So picking your brains now a little bit, but what kind of colors do you associate with relaxation? Are there specific colors to shy away from or to just kind of go towards in certain rooms?
Color psychology is really interesting, and it's very personal for different people. Um, Often we choose to dress in the colors that make us feel confident and happy. So if I'm working with a client and they're really unsure of what colors evoke what emotion in them, we sort of tend to look at their wardrobe. What do you choose to wear? What colors make you feel happy? What colors make you feel confident? And for me, it's always green. Green is the most relaxing, grounding colour. And any colour that I can see on the horizon when I go for a walk in Cornwall, the coastline is just lovely. And muting those colours, softening them. You can take the yellow from the gorse, but really mute it down to a nice mustard tone,
Yeah.
bringing in those lovely accent colours. Yeah, green is the colour that I associate with relaxation, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with you. To be honest, it's yeah. I think those color palettes, but also vice versa. Are there colors that you would advise to stay away from? Are they quite kind of anger or anxiety inducing in common, or
So dark blue is sort of a colour that evokes that competition and that fierceness. So it might be effective in an office, but it wouldn't be something that I'd recommend in a bedroom. Similarly, like orange is a creative colour. It's an energetic colour. It's associated with being creative, being successful. So it might be a great colour to have in a kitchen as an accent, to boost that energy. It's really interesting to think about. Some people are drawn to different colours for different reasons. It might be that it was actually their favourite colour as a child and it's just really stuck with them, or it could be that it reminds them of a grandparent's house. So
yeah,
it's very personal. It's really nice to understand why people, blue is often a cool colour, but it's also very calming and grounding in the right tones. Obviously, deep blue, as I've just spoken about, is that competitive, fierce strength colour. But subtle blues, gentle blues, if you find yourself you're really hot at night, perhaps if you're a lady going through menopause, for example, and you feel really hot because you're having your hot flushes through the night, a really gentle tone of blue might have quite a cooling effect on your environment.
yeah,
So
okay,
yeah, the colours really do react differently as well to whatever else is around them. So they will change given, the art that's there, the light that's there, the colour of the bulb that you're using. So
yeah.
it's a lot of fun to have with colour.
I can imagine, yeah, and it seems like it's much more than just going, oh, yellow is this or orange can be this. It's yeah, that's amazing. But obviously, on all the important benefits of everything, there's always the flip side of the negatives. So, what would you advise on your experience, kind of to stay away from? What are the big no nos of, I suppose, interior design and layout consideration?
I would always avoid copy and paste approach. So if you've seen something in a magazine or on Instagram, Pinterest, don't just go, I like that, copy it. Try to understand why you like it and try to analyze it into, will it actually work in your home with the light that you've got and the people, the family, the pets? Is it practical for you in your home? So don't just simply copy and paste something that you've seen, because that's right for the property that it's used in. I also think be really careful about lighting. So I have a real reluctance to use downlights as much as possible, because the direction of light is simply a tunnel going down. It doesn't give light to the corners of the room or a wider area. So they're really just downlights are for task lighting. But in sort of the last 10 years, there's been a bit of a go to town on downlights and just run them like rail landing strips, through a property. So I always do avoid taking some caution with lighting and thinking about that really carefully. Knowing what you need, we've spoken about it before, but another example in sort of a kitchen or a living space, do you need a dining table to seat 12 for 1 day, 2 days in the year? Christmas, Easter, birthday, special occasions? Or can you actually have an extendable table that takes up less space, and you can have a comfortable chair for reading and a lovely side table, somewhere to sit and enjoy yourself? And actually, you've got two things there out of your space, rather than filling it with a huge table that's used a few times. And no doubt a lot of the week is covered in things that you've accumulated, things that haven't been put away, piles of ironing.
Yeah. Bigger table, more stuff
and
to
thinking
put away.
about Exactly. And people do it with kitchen islands as well, putting these, great, huge kitchen islands in. And then if you have a sink in your island, you pretty much, most of the time, you're going to have pots at the side of it, what things to wash and put away. So you've got to think about whether you're happy with that. And also, if you put a hob in your island, you're most likely to have utensil pots, oil, salt and pepper, and your pestle and mortar on there. So again, are you happy with that floating in the middle of your room, or actually does it suit you better to have those things at the side of the room and not a center point? Our island is that we've planned into our kitchen is an L shape with an L-shaped banquette seating on the inside and a table, and that's because I would find it uncomfortable to sit at a high stool at a breakfast bar, for example. So it's much better that I can have a table and sit down and prepare vegetables, pass them back onto the island, and then hopefully my other half will cook the dinner.
Yeah, I
think it's great as well. Sorry.
Carry on.
Yeah, I think it's great as well to not have a rigid layout and an identity of a room, and have that flexibility so that things can change and evolve with what you need. Maybe it's just for periods throughout the year you need rooms to be different. If you're somebody that has lots of medical support or surgeries, you might want to be able to create a space that's for the majority of the time is really relaxing, but then it might be something different later in the year. We spoke a bit ago about guest bedrooms. Do you need to have a guest bedroom, or can you have something that's flexible and can become a guest bedroom for the few occasions that you have people to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your comments on kind of thinking about how areas, say for example in a kitchen, if you had a hob, etc., in an island, is so important. And I think that resonates quite well with how I would think, because I wouldn't necessarily think, if I was designing or planning a kitchen, about those other things necessarily. I would be thinking that's a great idea. I could picture myself cooking there or washing the dishes there, but actually you're right, it's what surrounds it and what comes with it, and that's really important. So yeah, that's really kind of thought-provoking. I mean, is there anything else that you would like to feel that our listeners should know about this while I've got you here?
I think ultimately it's making your home work for you, how you need it to. So just get to know what doesn't work with your home now, what you wish you could do more of. Look at where you can remove stress and make life simpler. Just make your home work as hard as possible for you. It's a great investment to have. We spend a lot of time there, and we should create something that's really supportive.
So if people are wanting to hear more about what you do, get more involved and more support from yourself regarding their interior design, where can they get hold of you?
The easiest place is to go to chestnutinteriors.co.uk. There's links from there to all of the different social media platforms that I use, but you can also go through the contact page fill in a simple form, which will come straight to me. But if you want to chat, you can even book a free 15-minute consultation. So chestnutinteriors.co.uk.
Amazing, and thank you so much again for taking the time out. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
No, love having a chat. Always here for that.
And now, a listener question for Heal Your Home.
So, it's that time of the show, listener question to be answered. Now, let's go through the listener questions here. So I think Alex from Bodmin is a really great one. He has a flat, he's looking to upgrade his heating system. How best to go about it? Well, the first thing is ask yourself the question, is it your heating system that needs to be upgraded first? Because a lot of people can spend an awful lot of money investing in a brand new heating system when actually you've got a huge amount of heat escape going through the walls, the roof, the windows, the doors, etc. And actually then be completely pointless and a complete waste of your money changing the heating system in your home. So the first thing I would do is do a thermographic survey, or get a specialist in to do a thermographic survey. This will pinpoint any drafts, any excessive heat escape from the property, and you're looking at what's called the envelope, so the outside main walls, the elements of that building. And then you can identify any areas that you may need to consider upgrading first. However, hypothetically speaking, to answer your question, if all of those things check out and it's actually well insulated and the home is ready to have a new heating system, then again, it depends on your local resources. Now, if you're in a flat, if you have the ability to have an air source heat pump installed, or whether you can have solar panels such as photovoltaic or thermovoltaic, so photovoltaic for electrics if you wanted an electric form of heating, or thermovoltaic if you wanted it to then be put into some form of closed wet loop system like a radiator system or underfloor heating system. And then whether you add the ability to have an air source heat pump, or if you just wanted to go more traditional and you wanted an electric boiler, for example, or a gas boiler or an oil boiler, or you can go to something a bit different like a pellet boiler. They are grant funded depending on your eligibility, because they can be quite expensive. But there is a whole plethora of heating systems out there. An air source heat pump is really good. You can have a mechanical airflow system which also has heat input as well. So really, when you're looking at your property, first off, how big is your property? If it's a flat, I'm assuming it's not going to be any more than 2 or 3 bedrooms. You're going to be having a maximum of 5 rooms all in all, I'm assuming, all on one level. So also then you'll be looking at occupants. So do you have a large family? Is it only you? So how much of that space is going to be used for a general occupant use all the time? What's your behaviour in the sense of, are you out working most of the day? So actually, do you need to set that on a smart meter so it just ticks over at nice 18 degrees while you're not there, and then maybe raise slightly throughout the time you are there? So therefore, you're making the most out of your energy efficiency. In that case, something like electric heating systems are really good, because they can then work very closely with smart meters. Or you can have a nice air source heat pump that then typically flows through a heat exchange, which then you can then have nice warm and cool air coming through your property, which can then be regulated throughout the day and night. So it really is, before saying this is definitely something that is appropriate for you, look at how you behave and the people you live with behave in your property. Look at the timings that you're in your property and the resources available to you. Like I say, do you have gas? Are you able to put solar panels on the roof? Are you able to put an air source heat pump in? Don't forget, air source heat pumps can be noisy. So you don't want them under an opening window next to a bedroom, for example, or next to a neighbouring property, because you can then end up having complaints with your neighbours. So these are all things to discuss and think about prior to thinking of a heating system. My absolute favourite really is underfloor zoned electric heating, which is then offset with photovoltaic panelling. This then allows for smart technology to be utilised to then be able to optimise different areas of temperature, space, electric use, and then that is massively offset by your solar panels on your roof. This can then be helped alongside with an air source heat pump. So these can all work together. So it may not even just be a one option resolve for you. You may be able to use a few of these. So it's good to get an all-rounded expert in to be able to get their advice, to be able to understand, well, actually, certain elements may work very well in your orientation, in your location as well. There's no point in putting solar panels on the roof if you're surrounded by big mature trees and a lot of shade. But also there's no point in putting an air source heat pump in if you're then going to be penalized for it because you're not considering your neighbors. So really be careful with what you're doing and how you're doing it. But I hope that gives you a little bit more of a grounded understanding of what to do. And thank you for your question.
Jason's Tenant Top Tip.
So this week's episode's Tenant Top Tip is what to do if you're a tenant and you are left with no heating. Now, this can happen especially early winter, so we're probably in the wrong time of year for this Tenant Top Tip, but I thought it'd be useful anyway, and we can revisit this nearer to the disgusting winter weather that we have. So basically, the first thing to do is inform your landlord or letting agent immediately. Let them know the specifics, what's happened. Make sure that you're documenting that, making it very clear if it wasn't your fault, so that obviously damages cannot then therefore be sought against you. There's no negligence there. You've just simply put your heating on, for example, and something's gone bang. Now, this is important because you need to make sure that you keep record of all communication to make sure that you are doing your bit as a tenant, and hopefully then your landlord will do their bit at getting an immediate contractor out to resolve the issue. Now, also document the issue. Make sure you're taking photos, videos of what's going wrong, and if there's times of the day where things are happening and firing or misfiring, make sure you can give as much detail as possible to your landlord or letting agent. This will help them communicate with the contractor to get you a resolve quicker. So also seek temporary solutions. Now, contractors are not always available. Even landlords and letting agents that are really respectful and really on it, they are not magicians, and therefore they're not necessarily going to be able to get somebody out immediately that day, or even the next day, potentially, depending on where you are, especially leading into the winter months, because there's going to be a lot of boiler and heating issues. So always try and come up with a temporary solution, whether that be electric wall panel heaters, or wouldn't be wall panel heaters, but electric freestanding heaters, oil standing heaters, things like that, that may then therefore be a plug-in and turn on type scenario, which would then allow you to still have a safe, comfortable living temperature. And then therefore you may be able to negotiate that to be offset against your rent, because obviously it's unexpected cost, especially nearing Christmas time, that you do not want to be paying. So therefore your landlord may well be willing therefore to offset that against your rent, because it will be more expensive. Also, important considerations: don't withhold your rent unless absolutely necessary. Now, there are legal obligations and complications to this. It is very easy to think, well, I'm not paying my rent until this is resolved, but then you're going into a very tricky scenario where you can frustrate your relationship with your landlord, and therefore potentially you'd be in breach of your tenancy agreement. So be really careful. And also emergency repairs. The heating can pose significant risks. If your landlord is willing, or you have the finances to do so, it would be worth looking at getting an emergency repair done and then getting your landlord to repay or pay them directly. So it would be great to confirm this up front prior to any remedial works being undertaken. As soon as you update your landlord or letting agent of the issue, one of the first things you want to be asking is, if I can get somebody here quicker than you can can I then get that money reimbursed, or would you be willing to pay that contractor directly? So these are really, really important. And also familiarize yourself with your rights as a tenant. Now, you do have rights, and again, down to minimum energy efficiency standards and also health and safety within a tenanted home. You need to have a safe home with an adequate heating system. If this is not in place, and obviously things can go wrong, but if your landlord or letting agent is not willing to budge, look into your rights and look into local authorities and supporting experts to give you some backing to be able to get you the resolve that you and your family deserve.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. It really does mean a lot to me and my team. Check out the website at homehealthexpert.co.uk for more information, to check out the services that we can help with for you and your family and improve your home's health, and also for the top tip guides that we have available for you. You can submit listener questions through our website and also by emailing our team at info@homehealthexpert.co.uk or by searching for Home Health Expert on Instagram and Facebook. We will try our absolute best to get round to your questions and help your family out to improve your home's health. Don't forget to subscribe to Heal Your Home wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube if you're watching along. Thanks again for listening. It really does mean a lot. We could not do this without you, and in actual fact it would be completely pointless. So please send in your questions, and I look forward to you joining me in the next episode of Heal Your Home. Your health, your future, it all starts here.
Heal Your Home with Jason Ratcliffe, the home health expert.